is water. Hear me out. The beverage coffee, black coffee and espresso, is 98% water. And even espresso, which is more condensed, is still 85% to 90% water. And so a beverage that's majority water, it boggles the mind that people don't really pay attention to the water that they're using when they're brewing coffee. A lot of the time people don't like the taste of water out of the tap or city water, and yet they use it to brew coffee. So of course it's not going to produce a cup of coffee that tastes good if you don't like water on its own. So using filtered water, of course, it affects the taste, but it also affects the longevity of your espresso machine and your brewing devices, and it really directly affects the quality of the clarity in your cup. If you're sourcing really good coffee but using poor water, it's kind of pointless. When training baristas, I like to point out the fact that all coffee is stuff dissolved into water. It's why its cousin tea is very similar. It's just stuff dissolved into water. So if you have filtered water, there's more room in that water for stuff to dissolve. It's called osmosis. And so if that water is hard or filled to the brim with minerals, there's no room for anything to dissolve. And on the opposite end of things, if it's distilled water and it's too filtered, there's actually a tendency for too much stuff to dissolve into the water and it to taste off in that way as well. So you want to be able to have one right in the middle. You want to be able to get filtered water so that you get all the good stuff dissolved into the water so that it tastes good, clean, and exactly how you want, which is naturally a little bit sweet without that much bitterness or sourness. So where do we get filtered water? Simplest place is whatever you're using at home to be able to drink filtered water. If you're drinking that water, you're using that water to brew coffee. Start there. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, a lot of people buy bottled water. The big thing when buying bottled water, try not to get stuff that's too fancy because they add minerals for health benefits or taste. And whenever you do that, just like I explained, those minerals are going to take up space that prevents coffee from dissolving well. So look for pretty simple bottled water. Crystal Geyser is one of my go-tos. If you are near a Trader Joe's, their New Zealand bottled water is randomly some of the best bottled brewing water that I've used. And there's a bunch of blogs out there. You can Google that as well. Ideally, what we use at a cafe is a reverse osmosis system that takes everything out of the water and then puts back just a little bit of what we need. There's a version of that at home. If you get additives like third wave water, you get distilled water and then use their additive to be able to then bring that purified water up to what it should be to be able to brew good coffee. So there's a bunch of different ways, but going back to the beginning, if you're drinking the water, you're using that to be able to brew the coffee. So you're using filtered water. What else? One of the other main aspects about brewing coffee that I wish I had known when I was trying to source brewing equipment or do it myself is water temperature. Water temperature plays a massive factor in how well the coffee brews. If it's not hot enough, it's not going to brew as well. Of course, we know about cold brew, but that happens over a longer period of time. The hotter the water is, the more that the molecules are moving and the more things are dissolved in the water. Think about any time you've tried to put sugar in iced coffee. You really got to stir that thing up. You put sugar in hot coffee, it dissolves right away. It's the exact same thing when it comes to brewing. If the water's not hot enough, the coffee's not going to dissolve as well. As an example, this is just a regular tea bag in cold water. You drop it in and push it down. Not much is going on. And we even stir it a little bit. Stab it, jam it, really try and get it going. The color doesn't change that much. And this is just used as an illustration that when you're using water that's too cold, that's not dissolving quickly at all. And when you only have 3 minutes of contact time between the coffee and the water, it needs to work a little bit more than that. All right, so that was cold water. This water is about 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's right below boiling. This is what most people consider ideal brewing temperature. The main thing I want to emphasize is it's hot and the last one was cold. So you guys can see the difference in how stuff dissolves into hot water. Same type of tea dropped in, and just to give it a fair chance, we're going to push it down and agitate it, and you can see the color is already starting to change. So after just a couple of seconds, the hot water is the same color as the cold water with tea that's been sitting for about 10 or 11 minutes. And so when you're brewing coffee, you need to make sure that your water is delivered evenly and it's delivered hot. Those factor into the type of brewing devices that you choose. So if you have a batch brewer or whatnot, you need to make sure that it's doing exactly that. delivering it evenly and making sure it's hot. But this is also a big factor into how people do pour overs at home or any other manual brewing. If you're not paying attention to how hot and how evenly you're dispersing the water, you're going to have coffee that's going to end up tasting sour or under extracted. And all that means is it's a bad cup of coffee and it will not taste like it does at the cafe. To wrap everything up with water, make sure it's filtered. If it's not water you would normally drink, then don't brew with it. Also, make sure your water's hot enough. If it's not hot enough, stuff is not going to dissolve and it's going to taste sour and it's just going to be a bad cup of coffee that will not taste like it does at the cafe. And remember, that's our goal. So make sure your water's hot and filtered, just like your dates.